Low Earth orbit technology has undergone a fundamental and irreversible transformation. What was once viewed primarily as a scientific or commercial frontier has transitioned into a central instrument of national power. Today, LEO is essential for economic security, global statecraft, and the execution of modern military operations. The domain is no longer just a place to explore, it is a place to govern. It is the new high ground of the digital age. We are currently navigating what many experts describe as a new Sputnik moment. However, the dynamics of this era are vastly different from the mid 20th century. While the original space race was driven exclusively by rival government programs, today's competition is fueled by rapid, high stakes commercial innovation. The speed of the private sector is now the primary engine of national security. The nation that can most effectively harness this commercial energy will win the race. This shift means that national security now depends as much on industrial scale and private sector agility as it does on traditional military uniforms and government oversight. The Center for Strategic and International Studies highlights that LEO is the ultimate high ground for the 21st century. To lose our edge in orbit is to lose our ability to project power and protect interests on Earth. The infrastructure of tomorrow is being built in the void today. The United States currently leads in almost every measurable LEO metric, including the total number of active satellites, the weight of payloads delivered, and the frequency of annual orbital launches. But the CSIS report warns that this dominance is precarious. Our lead is not a permanent fixture of the geopolitical landscape. It is a temporary advantage that must be aggressively maintained. We are ahead, but the gap is closing. Consider the sheer economic stakes involved. The global space economy was valued at approximately $613 billion in 2024, showing a robust 7.8% increase year over year. This is not just about scientific exploration, it is about the foundational infrastructure of the global digital economy. From financial transactions to global logistics, the world's wealth now flows through space. LEO is the new maritime trade route of the 21st century. The US government remains the world's primary investor, spending $77 billion on space in 2024 alone. This figure significantly eclipses the $55 billion combined total of all other world governments, including China, Russia, and the European Union combined. While we are outspending our rivals, the efficiency and strategic focus of that spending are under intense scrutiny. It's not just about how much we spend, but how strategically we deploy those resources. A significant portion of US capability currently relies on a single provider, SpaceX and its Starlink constellation. The report emphasizes that such extreme supplier concentration, while reflecting American brilliance, creates a strategic vulnerability for the nation. We are currently reliant on a single point of failure for our most critical orbital services. If that single provider is compromised, the entire national architecture is at risk. To mitigate this risk, the US must move beyond reliance on any one company by fostering a more robust, dynamic, and competitive domestic ecosystem. We need a plurality of providers capable of launching and maintaining critical infrastructure at the speed of relevance. Competition is not just good for the economy, it is a requirement for national resilience. A diverse market is a secure market. China is moving with unprecedented speed to close the gap. Utilizing a neo-mercantilist model, they leverage massive state subsidies to build rival constellations. Their goal is not just to participate in the space economy, but to challenge American leadership and set the rules for the next generation of orbital operations for the entire planet. They are building a state-directed alternative to the market-driven Western model. As of early 2026, the United States maintained over 11,000 active satellites in orbit, while China had roughly 1,100. At first glance, this seems like a comfortable margin, but the data on planned satellites paints a much more aggressive and concerning picture for American strategists over the next decade. The volume of planned activity suggests a massive industrial mobilization on the other side of the Pacific. China plans to launch over 40,000 LEO satellites over the next 10 years. This is more than 5 times the total number of active satellites in orbit globally just 2 years ago. The scale of their ambition is industrial and strategic, designed to create a global digital infrastructure that bypasses Western networks and establishes Chinese standards as the default for the developing world. The conflict in Ukraine has served as a primary case study for the dual-use significance of LEO. Commercial broadband has provided unprecedented force multiplication, allowing for resilient communications and real-time intelligence that disrupts traditional enemy operations. It is the first time we have seen a commercial network become a decisive military asset. This reality has changed the calculations of military planners globally. The lesson from Ukraine is undeniable. LEO is no longer an optional luxury for the modern warfighter. It is a foundational requirement. Without reliable orbital connectivity, modern military forces are effectively blinded and silenced on the digital battlefield. The nation that controls the data flow controls the fight. This realization is driving a massive reinvestment in space-based tactical capabilities across the globe. Despite our technical lead, the U.S. suffers from a fragmented and often contradictory space policy. The CSIS report criticizes the lack of a robust central coordinating body, which slows interagency cooperation and delays critical regulatory reforms. We are often our own worst enemy in the race for orbital dominance, held back by legacy bureaucracy and turf wars that belong to a slower, less competitive era. CSIS recommends empowering a central body, potentially the Office of Science and Technology Policy, to shepherd space priorities across civil, defense, and intelligence agencies. We need a unified national strategy that speaks with one voice and acts with a singular purpose. Fragmentation is a luxury we can no longer afford. We must move at the speed of the market, not the speed of the bureaucracy. One of the most significant technical and legal hurdles is our outdated regulatory environment, specifically regarding the radio frequency spectrum. Spectrum is the lifeblood of communication, but our rules for managing it are stuck in a bygone era. We are trying to run a 21st century economy on 20th century rules. Without spectrum reform, our technical innovations will remain trapped in a regulatory bottleneck. Current spectrum sharing rules were created 25 years ago when geostationary satellites were the primary focus of the industry. These legacy rules often prioritize older, less efficient orbits over the dynamic, high-capacity needs of massive LEO constellations. We are effectively throttling our own progress to protect the status quo. It is time to prioritize the infrastructure of the future over the relics of the past. Modernizing these rules, particularly the equivalent power flux density standards, is critical for future growth. We must ensure that new LEO infrastructure can provide maximum service without being unnecessarily hindered by outdated interference models. Regulatory reform is not just red tape. It is a strategic imperative. We must align our laws with the physical reality of modern space operations. The nation that leads in LEO will define the rules and norms for the 21st century. This makes international diplomacy as important as aerospace engineering. We are not just launching satellites. We are launching a legal and normative framework for the entire human species in space. The diplomatic battle for orbital leadership is already underway in the hallways of international organizations. The upcoming World Radio Conference in 2027 is a critical milestone on this diplomatic calendar. The U.S. must engage in high-level diplomacy to ensure that international spectrum allocations and rules favor open competition and prevent any single nation from dominating global digital infrastructure. This is a battle for the soul of the digital world, and the rules of engagement are being written now. We must also confront the physical risks of a crowded orbit. Collision avoidance maneuvers for the Starlink constellation alone increased by an order of magnitude in the last year. As LEO becomes more congested, the risk of a Kessler syndrome scenario grows, where orbital debris makes space travel and operation impossible. We must manage the environment as diligently as we manage the technology. Perhaps the most catastrophic vulnerability identified in the report is the potential for a high-altitude nuclear test by an adversary. A single event could create a radiation field capable of knocking out large portions of our unhardened LEO sensing and communication layers instantly. It is a threat we are currently ill-prepared to handle, and one that requires immediate investment in system hardening and resilience. To mitigate these threats, CSIS suggests augmenting LEO constellations with at least 8 additional satellites in medium Earth orbit. This provides a necessary, redundant layer for the most critical national security functions, ensuring we aren't betting everything on a single orbital altitude. Redundancy is the parent of resilience, and MEO offers a vantage point that LEO simply cannot match. This multi-layered approach is particularly critical for tracking hypersonic weapons. These vehicles are smaller and faster than traditional missiles, making them incredibly difficult for LEO-only systems to track against the background of the Earth's surface. We need a higher vantage point to see the coming storms. The defense of the nation depends on our ability to see what is moving in the high atmosphere. Ultimately, maintaining the space edge requires a whole-of-nation strategy. We must combine the innovative speed of Silicon Valley with the strategic direction and long-term foresight of Washington. The silos between commercial and defense must be broken to ensure our collective security. Strategy without innovation is stagnant. Innovation without strategy is aimless. We must lead with both. The nation that defines the norms and standards of LEO today will lead the global economy and the security landscape of tomorrow. We cannot afford to be passive observers in this transformation of the orbital domain. We must be the architects of the new rules, or we will be forced to live by them. The choices we make in this decade will define the next century of human activity. The reforms outlined by CSIS provide a clear and necessary framework for securing American leadership in this ultimate high ground. The time for fragmented policy and legacy thinking is over. The future belongs to those who act with strategic clarity and technical boldness. The horizon is wide, and the stakes have never been higher. We must seize this moment of transition. Securing low Earth orbit is not just a technological challenge. It is a test of national will. It requires us to rethink our regulations, our diplomacy, and our industrial base to ensure that space remains a free, secure, and open domain for the entire world. It is a mission that transcends political cycles and budget years. It is a commitment to the future of our civilization in the stars. As we move forward, the strategic reforms recommended by the report must become the foundation of our national space strategy. The stakes are too high for anything less than a comprehensive and unified response to the challenges ahead. We must build a future where our orbital edge is beyond question, ensuring that the orbital domain remains a source of strength, not a point of vulnerability. In the end, this is not really a story about satellites and rockets. It is a story about the endurance of a rules-based order in the most critical domain of the modern age. How we respond today will echo for generations to come. We are the stewards of this new frontier, and our legacy will be defined by the strength of the order we establish. This is the challenge of our generation. This challenge is not an isolated one. To understand how the competition in LEO fits into the broader struggle for global technological leadership, we must look at the foundations of our industrial resilience. Because this is not really a story about space dominance, it is a story about the future of liberal democracy in a technological age. Watch our next video to explore how the industrial base defines the fate of nations. Always remember, a grand world awaits. End transmission.